look outwards. 15 years ago, we walked into clients for patent drafting, and they said it costs us X number of dollars for a single patent draft. How much can you do it for? We made our back of the envelope calculations. It could have been half the price with somebody making a first draft in India and then settling it through an American law firm. So we set up a joint venture law firm, and we walked into offices and people said, so you're based out of India and you're going to give us half the price. Literally, first time approached them, and they brought out files and said, here, go draft them. Huge opportunities again. Why are we not looking at 2-3 important aspects? We are very powerful on computers. The computers will run all law firms in the globe in the next 10 years. There are already systems which are standardizing systems. Why are we not doing that? Major law firms have set up offices in Philippines to do back office functions. You name it, Baker & McKenzie has a huge outsourced department in Philippines for managing portfolios of lawyers. Why are we not looking at those opportunities? Why are we not looking at going global? Having said that, when these law firms come in and when we look global, somebody better be thinking to open up our shackles. I can't even advertise myself in this country. That's ridiculous. I have foreign law firms who are offering services in India on global magazines advertising in India. Why can't we have the 1-800-DIVORCE? Why not? So we need to open up the market, treat it as a business. That's one aspect of it. Interestingly, I was speaking to Mr. Gopal Subramaniam a couple of months ago, and he completely freaked out when he heard about global law firms coming in. He said, so you're going to have constitutional issues of your nation being decided by foreign lawyers in your courts. Is that what you want? So you will have interpretations of your law made by foreigners sitting in your courts. I thought that was an interesting thought. And he said it's absolutely absurd that you should allow for what runs your country, that you will allow foreign nationals to come in and interpret your law for you in a manner obviously which benefits them. Will you be willing to go to that? Because lawyers and legal service is an important aspect of law enforcement. Do you want that outsourced? Nobody outsources that. And he was of the view that you can be rest assured that all of you guys will be working for big multinational law firms and none of you will be owning any of them. I tend to agree with that. I would also, before the law firms are allowed in, I would have really liked to see a management cum law course. I would really like to see non-lawyers becoming partners in law firms who can manage the law firms. I would really like to see this concept of a managing partner who has some professional degree to run a law firm. Talk to anybody who's running a large law firm. It's a nightmare to run law firms. Do I want to be a lawyer or do I want to be a manager? Why should that be a conflict? I would have liked us to develop our law firms in a particular manner so that we are ready for that competition. I'm not sure we've done that. We've acted like typical India does. Open it up one fine day and everybody's out there, so the thumbs up sells out to the Coke. It's a great product, it still sells, but Coke sells it back to us. So let's make sure we keep the thumbs ups here by making sure that we institutionalize our own law firms today by opening up the market, giving us the space to grow. Look at even spaces. To get a place to run a law firm here is impossible. You're running out of homes, and sort of open up that space. Allow us to run it as a professional entity, then allow competition to come in, and then we should be looking outwards to look for opportunities. And I think there are more opportunities for us outside. And look at the number of law colleges here now. There are kids coming out of law colleges by the dozens. Why are we not wanting to give them that opportunity? So I think letting law firms in is a good thing. Letting us out is an even better thing. We better start looking at both equally energetically.
I mean, there were two comments that I would make, and this is more in the context of the draft rules. Is that you want change to happen in the legal services sector, and so therefore opening up the market is one way of bringing that change. I mean, all of us know that your experience as a client with going to a court and going through the process for enforcement is terrible. So this is one of the attempts of the government to do it. I think one of the stakeholders in all of this is the Indian firms. And so how do you, the expectation of the rules is that Indian firms will forever look to just practice themselves in India. there is no thought of Indian firms actually traveling out of India and trying to become global in nature. Now, what does it mean becoming global in nature? Becoming global in nature means, as an Indian firm, you should be able to hire international lawyers in your firm. You should be able to hire international partners in your firm. Indian firms have presences outside of India, but those are basically marketing offices. What you want is practicing offices. You cannot have a practicing office if you just send people from here. You need to hire local talent in local places. You need to pay them. The question is, does it allow you to actually do that, any of these rules? So the rules are sort of limited in the sense that they're very focused on opening up the Indian market rather than taking a wider view of, yes, many of the Indian firms will get gobbled up by some of the international firms in a 10 to 15 year period. But are you even hoping for 1 or 2 or 3 Indian firms to actually have a global presence? This rule, the set of draft rules doesn't seem to think in those terms. The other remark that I had, and funnily, I mean, lots of us have commented over here that what's going to happen, firms are only going to be allowed to practice foreign law. You speak to most people that are sort of very close to the issue, they will tell you that actually the draft rules tend to open up the entire market. Foreign law is a bogus notion. It only means that you can't stand up in court and argue your case, because if I want to draft or negotiate a contract, I'll just keep the governing law blank, or I'll call it English law, and at the last moment I'll switch it to Indian law. So I'll get a certificate from an Indian lawyer. You can partner with an Indian lawyer. So partner doesn't mean I need to have a partnership firm. I can actually have partnering, which is an association or person kind of a concept. So you can actually provide full-blown services under these draft rules, which may have been the intent. But it is not looking at how are you going to be in a situation where you have 3 to 5 Indian firms that become more global in a sense. What are you going to do in other ways of reforming the system? How is law going to become more attractive? Is it going to be an attractive profession only for Indian lawyers to join international firms? Do you not want it to be attractive for Indian lawyers to join Indian firms? And so therefore it sort of misses some of these points in terms of, so it's part of the picture, it's not necessarily the entire picture. And to say no level playing field, I mean, it's just one more set of rules will come out and you will have the ability to set up your websites and you'll have the ability to do your marketing material. That's not a big deal. Levels playing field is a bit of a misnomer because it's not level playing field in a regulatory sense, very easily cured. Once you give that feedback to government, that will be cured. I think the problem is just economically. How are you going to look at the economics of practice of law? And how are you going to approach it? Does India have a macro perspective of how we want to be? Or do you actually want to always be the target entities? Just moving on from that topic, how would we tend to see, let's say that everything else works. So the rules are all harmonized in a manner that it works well. The fee levels are okay. What do you think? So fee levels, let's say it's an economic thing. There are some firms out there that are sort of crazy and say, never mind, let's invest in India. How do you see the next 2 years? And how do you see the next 5 years? What do you think will change in the Indian market? What do you think will happen? And put it in the context of what may have happened in other jurisdictions. What may have happened in the early 70s in London. What may have happened in Europe. What may have happened in Korea. What may have happened in Singapore. What may have happened in China. Or what may have happened in Australia. So how do you look at what should we expect to happen in India if the market were to be opened up, as many voices seem to somehow suggest that it will happen in September. I don't know if September is a good enough date or not, but what do you expect to see?
I think the question...
Good question. First of all, let me say what I would like to see happen in the next 2 years. And that would be a concentration among Indian firms and also among the regulators to strengthening and improving the Indian legal profession by removing any internal or traditional barriers to the business success of law firms. Now, what those barriers might be and which ones should be modified and which ones should not is a national question. There are some very contentious issues, such as multidisciplinary partnership, ownership of law firms by non-lawyers, those types of issues. But I would like to see a strengthening of Indian law firms, both in the regulatory sphere and in terms of their own ability to prepare for the opportunities that they will have through a greater exposure to an international legal market. As they say, when you open a door, you can go both in and out that door. I would expect to see shortly after the market opens up, what I think will happen based on experiences, particularly in Korea, where they've had a phased-in approach to opening of their market, would be, first of all, some strengthening of international best friend relationships between Indian firms and foreign firms. That will enable the foreign firms to identify the best possible long-term collaborators in the Indian legal market. So I would expect to see some probing, some strengthening of the existing relationships. I think you'll receive a lot of requests from foreign firms to visit you and to introduce themselves and to discuss the possibilities to work together. I would not be surprised to see one or two of the major global firms, particularly those that operate a Swiss Verein type of structure, such as Denton's, to actually look for a good Indian firm to acquire or to join them. In a Swiss Verein, you don't really acquire a firm, but you have them join. So I think it'll be slow, but I would think that 2 years from now, there would probably be a small number of global firms that have actually established offices through local affiliates in India, and there'll be a significant interchange of expertise and knowledge and client relationships between Indian firms and foreign firms. I would expect a more gradual process than a stampede.
Ron?
I take a slightly contrarian view to that. I think if we make the assumption that when foreign firms are going to come here and they open the doors, they're going to be practicing foreign law, I think the question of fees in particular is totally irrelevant because they're going to be practicing foreign law and not Indian law. So someone like Anubhuti, for example, she's not really going to Freshfields or White and Case to advise on a domestic Indian law transaction. So therefore, the question of fees for domestic clients, I think, is irrelevant. Where, for example, it's going to help someone like Anubhuti, for example, if foreign firms are here, is that when there is an outbound transaction, if there is a foreign firm in Bombay or Delhi, she can pick up the phone, and it's highly likely that the fee quote that she'll get from Delhi or Bombay will probably be cheaper than London, simply because the cost of doing business is cheaper in India, and that cost will be passed on to the client. So I think, to summarize, my view in the short term, I think it's going to be beneficial for Indian corporates who are doing outbound work.
Here's how I view it. In people who go to court, I don't think any foreigner can ever go to court in India for the next century. It'll take him 100 years to understand the system of why cases get adjourned. Why do you charge for what nothing happened in court? And it'll be very difficult for them to understand that. On the flip side, talking for intellectual property, I can assure you that there will be law firms which will set up offices the very next day. They will hire the very people that I have hired, give them a better paycheck, language that they understand, I can assure you, having seen both sides of the fence, a majority of the work we get because the way we communicate to the client. 90% of the people don't communicate well to the client, and that's half the battle won. So they will be communicating better. As far as fee schedules are concerned, in intellectual property, you can be rest assured this is a market which is still at a very nascent stage. Our patent filing globally is very, very low. It's going to increase. India is going to take up a position of global advantage. Your maximum IP filings are going to be in India, and a majority of those are going to be done by foreign law firms because we don't know our backside from the front. Having said that, I completely agree that we should institutionalize our own firms before we allow that to happen. Release our shackles. Otherwise, I fear that there will be foreign law firms which will be providing advices in India, not for foreign advices. I don't think they will set up offices. It's very difficult to provide legal advice in England or in other parts of even common law jurisdictions, because we just don't have that understanding of those systems. And even though we can read the black letter of the law and get onto a LexisNexis, it's very difficult to understand and advise to a comprehensive level, but it's not so difficult to then advise on